Welcome back, everyone. Today we're taking a deep dive into something pretty unique. It's a translated Tamil poem. It's called Hymn 11. And, it's all about this intense moment of, spiritual realization, or you could even say awakening.
Right.
And it gets into all these fascinating concepts like divine nectar and sanmargam.
Oh, yeah.
Plus this really powerful message about unity. Should be interesting.
Well, one thing that strikes me right away is how direct the poem is.
Oh.
It doesn't just describe a personal experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the poet is actually addressing the world.
Really?
Almost like an invitation for everyone to share in this awakening.
Wow, yeah. You can see that in the first line of the translation,
Right.
where it says, "This is the moment that you have encountered, O world, where you will come to realize."
That's quite an opening.
It really is.
Grabs your attention right away.
Definitely sets a bold tone for the rest of the poem.
For sure. And it makes you think, what is it the poet wants the world to realize?
Yeah, good question.
Well, verse 2 gives us a clue, I think. It talks about encountering a great Lord tested through grace.
Tested through grace.
What do you think about that phrase?
Well, to me, it suggests that this awakening isn't just like a random thing, This great Lord and being tested through grace makes it sound like almost divine intervention.
Yeah, like a transformative moment.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder about the nature of this test and the role of grace in this whole process.
Definitely. It seems like this idea of a divine force kind of guiding the poet's journey is crucial.
Yeah.
But then in verse 3, things get even more interesting, I think.
What do you mean?
Well, there's this description of divine nectar flowing, and giving clarity.
That's pretty vivid imagery.
Right. It almost feels, tangible somehow.
It does. It reminds me of those similar concepts in other spiritual traditions.
Like what?
Well, like in Hinduism, there's Amrita, the nectar of immortality. And it's often connected to enlightenment and spiritual liberation.
I see.
Or in Greek mythology, there's ambrosia.
Right, the drink of the gods.
Yeah, which was supposed to grant eternal life.
Interesting. So you're thinking this divine nectar in our poem could be a similar idea.
Yeah, possibly. Like a symbol for something deeper.
Yeah, that's a good connection.
Yeah.
It does seem like this nectar represents some kind of spiritual nourishment, this source of wisdom and clarity that changes how the poet sees things.
It's not just seeing things differently. It's like experiencing reality on a whole new level.
Exactly. And that feeling of clarity leads right into verse 4.
Oh, yeah.
Where the poem takes a really dramatic turn. It's like everything hidden suddenly becomes clear.
Wow.
The poet talks about unseen visions being revealed, like a spiritual curtain being pulled back.
This is where we see those classic signs of a spiritual awakening, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's that sudden realization that you were only seeing a small part of reality.
And now, this much larger, more profound truth is becoming visible.
Powerful stuff.
It can be overwhelming.
Definitely.
But if this divine nectar represents this new clarity, this wisdom, what exactly is being revealed in these unseen visions?
Yeah, what is it?
Is it a deeper understanding of the self?
Maybe.
Of the universe? Or even a glimpse into the nature of the divine?
Those are all good questions.
I know.
I think the poem leaves it open to interpretation, invites us to think about all the different aspects of this awakening experience.
That's true.
But what's interesting is that the poet isn't keeping this to themselves.
What do you mean?
Well, in verse 5, the tone changes. It becomes more encouraging.
Okay.
The poet actually urges the listener to hold steady and experience the same peace.
There's a real sense of, generosity there, isn't there?
Oh, yeah.
A desire to share this newfound peace with the world.
Absolutely.
It's pretty inspiring. It's like the poet is saying, hey, this isn't just for me, it's for everyone. You can experience this too.
Exactly. It's a call to action.
Yeah.
An invitation to go on our own spiritual journeys. And it ties in really well with the themes of unity and connection that come up in the next verse.
Oh, right. Verse 6 is all about those boundaries dissolving, isn't it?
It is.
The poet says, I see no difference between myself and others. We are all part of this grand tapestry of existence.
Powerful stuff.
Really challenges that whole idea of separateness.
This isn't just some sentimental idea of unity either.
No.
It comes from a deep understanding of how interconnected everything is. The poet is saying that the boundaries we see between ourselves and others, they're ultimately illusions.
And that leads to this idea of eternal understanding in verse 7, right? Where it talks about an understanding that rises from the broken circle of life and last beyond our physical existence.
This is where the poem gets really philosophical.
It does.
Yeah.
What do you make of that broken circle of life?
Well, it could be talking about the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth.
Mm-hmm.
A concept found in lots of Eastern philosophies.
Yeah.
The poet seems to be saying that we eventually reach an understanding that goes beyond the limits of our physical lives.
So it's knowledge that survives death. A truly eternal understanding.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder, what is the nature of this understanding? What are we supposed to learn from this broken circle of life?
I'm not sure, but I have a feeling that the final verse, with that intriguing concept of San Margam, might hold the answer.
Good point. You're right about that last verse. It kind of brings all these abstract ideas back down to earth.
It does. It feels like a culmination of everything we've talked about.
Right.
But before we get too far into that, could you maybe explain what San Margam actually is? I'm not really familiar with that term.
Oh yeah, sure. It's a super important concept in Tamil Shaivism, which is a branch of Hinduism that's especially big in South India.
Gotcha.
San Margam literally means the true path.
I see.
And it's often described as this path of, ethical and righteous living that leads to ultimately spiritual liberation.
So it's not just about having these deep insights or awakening experiences. It's about actually putting that wisdom into practice, right?
That's it. Living a life that's aligned with truth and righteousness.
And how do you do that?
Well, in Tamil Shaivism, there's a big emphasis on devotion to Shiva, who's, the supreme deity.
Okay.
As a way to, cultivate these qualities and move along this path.
That's interesting. It makes me wonder, though.
What's that?
If this poem is coming from a Tamil Shaivism background, how do those themes connect with other spiritual traditions or philosophies?
Oh, that's a good question.
Because so far, it seems like a lot of what we've discussed is pretty universal, wouldn't you say?
You're right, actually. This whole idea of spiritual awakening.
Yeah.
This, sudden shift in consciousness where you see reality in a totally new way. It's not limited to just one religion or culture.
Definitely no.
You see hints of it in Buddhism, Hinduism, even in mystical parts of Christianity.
Yeah. So the specifics might be different, but that core awakening experience, that feeling of interconnectedness, going beyond the ego, getting a glimpse of a deeper reality.
It's a recurring theme throughout human spiritual history.
It really is. And that's what I find so fascinating about this poem, Yeah. It speaks to something deep inside us, something that goes beyond cultural boundaries. It does. It's like it's tacking into this universal human desire for meaning and connection.
Absolutely. This poem isn't just about some abstract spiritual concept.
Yeah.
It's about that fundamental human longing for something bigger than ourselves.
I see.
The search for meaning, that desire for connection.
Yeah.
The yearning for truth, right? These are all things that are just deeply ingrained in us as humans.
I think so.
And the poem suggests that maybe through spiritual awakening, through connecting with that divine essence within us, within everything, we can find answers to those longings.
That brings us to this idea of truth then, doesn't it?
It does.
This poem is called The Path of Truth.
Right.
But how do you think the poet defines truth here? It's such a complicated idea.
It really is.
And it feels like it's become even more slippery in our world today.
Oh, I know.
With all this information overload and all these conflicting viewpoints.
Right, so how do we even figure it out?
Yeah, exactly. How do we find our own sense of truth in all this noise?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I think the poem gives us some clues.
What do you mean?
This whole awakening experience.
Yeah.
This process of connecting with the divine, it seems like a crucial step toward understanding truth.
So it's not about blindly following rules or someone else's definition.
No, it's more about developing a deep inner knowing, like an intuitive sense of what feels true to you.
That's powerful, and it makes me think about how the poet emphasized San Margam.
Yeah.
That path of righteousness.
Right.
Maybe it's not just about following rules, but about aligning what we do with our deepest understanding of what's true and good.
Exactly. Embodying that truth in our lives.
Yeah.
Making choices that reflect what we believe in and help ourselves and others.
So this poem is more than just a description of some spiritual experience. It's like a call to action.
Absolutely.
An invitation to live a life based on truth, unity, and service to something greater than ourselves.
You said it perfectly. And this brings us back to this idea of awakening, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's a big part of our conversation.
For sure.
But I'm curious, what do you think about how someone might actually recognize a spiritual awakening in their own life?
That's a good question. What are the signs?
Yeah, what are some things to look for?
Well, based on the poem, I'd say a heightened sense of interconnectedness is a big one.
Right.
That feeling of oneness with everything, recognizing that divine spark in everything and everyone.
That's definitely a common thread. And often that shift in perspective comes with a change in your values and priorities.
Oh, how so?
Well, things that used to seem important might suddenly feel small. Like material possessions or wanting approval from others might not matter as much.
Interesting.
They're replaced by this deeper need for meaning, purpose, and spiritual growth.
It's like a resetting of what really matters in life.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe that's part of what the poet is trying to get across. The idea that true fulfillment doesn't come from outward achievements.
Right.
But from aligning yourself with something greater on the inside.
Makes sense. It's a pretty beautiful idea when you think about it.
It is. And, this inner shift often comes with a deep sense of peace and joy, too.
Oh, yeah.
This feeling of being connected to something so much bigger than yourself, even when life gets tough.
That's amazing.
It's like knowing that you're exactly where you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Doing what you're meant to do.
That's pretty powerful. It makes me wonder, has anyone listening ever had an experience like that?
Like a moment of awakening?
Yeah. It doesn't have to be some huge life-changing event, right?
Right.
Sometimes it's subtle,
Like a quiet nudge from the universe.
Exactly.
It can be just a moment where something clicks,
Right. Or maybe it's just this, feeling of deep connection that sticks with you.
Yeah, that stays with you.
Long after the experience is over.
It definitely leaves a mark,
It does. I think so. So, has anyone listening had an experience that felt like an awakening to them?
What do you think?
It'd be great to hear about it, share your thoughts, your moments in the comments, but for now, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive into this, remarkable poem, really.
I agree. This one's really stuck with me.
Me too. To recap, I guess, Hymn 11 takes us through this really powerful spiritual awakening.
Yeah, and it explores all these things like divine grace, interconnectedness.
That's right. And the search for truth.
Oh, and the eternal nature of understanding.
That's a big one. It encourages us to, look beneath the surface, question everything we think we know, and really try to understand ourselves and the world around us better.
I like that. And it reminds us that this journey toward awakening, we're not alone in it.
Right?
It's a journey we take together,
I think so.
All connected by that shared longing for meaning and purpose and truth.
Yeah. One of the most powerful things I'm taking away from this is that idea that understanding from the
What was it?
broken circle of life, right?
Yeah.
That it's eternal.
That's a good one.
It gives me this sense of hope, dream, and purpose, knowing that even though our bodies, our physical selves are temporary, the wisdom we gain, the knowledge.
Yeah, it can go beyond those limits.
It really can. And ultimately, I think the poem is pushing us to embrace this whole journey.
Pushing us. How do you mean?
Well, to walk the path of truth.
Okay.
But with courage and conviction, knowing that it leads to a deeper understanding of ourselves.
And the universe.
Exactly. So, as we finish up here, I want to leave everyone with just one final thought.
All right, lay it on us.
Does this whole message of unity in the poem resonate with you?
Good question.
And if it does, how can you actually bring that into your own life?
Yeah, how can you live it?
How can you build a sense of connection with the people you're surrounded by, with nature?
The whole world, really.
Yeah, exactly. Let this poem be a jumping off point for you to explore those big questions.
That's a great way to put it. We want you to think about what it means to you.
Yeah.
Find other spiritual writings that speak to you, and keep going on your own path of discovery and awakening.
Who knows? Maybe in a future deep dive, we'll get to explore some of those other writings and philosophies together.
That'd be fun.
Until then, keep searching, keep asking questions, and keep the conversation going.